Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Yasmine S, cardiologist and best-selling author, and this is my podcast, Positive Vibes on the Sunny Side. Each week, my goal is to bring you uplifting stories and insights to inspire you to live your happiest, healthiest, most positive life. So thank you for joining me. So the following interview was recorded in April of this year, 2025. In fact, when I was planning this podcast, Dylan Crowell graciously agreed to be my first interviewee, and I can't thank him enough for that. So if you hear us refer to dates that happened earlier in the year, that's why. I'm so glad to have the podcast going strong now and to be able to finally share this interview with you. Before we get into the interview, though, I want to pause a moment to remember a very special person who passed away on the last day of August of this year, 2025, just a few days ago. Someone you've heard me talk about and write about a lot. In fact, if you go back to episode 1 of this podcast, I tell you about him when I read from the prologue of my first book, Walk Through Fire, The Train Disaster That Changed America. And if you read that book, you'll know a lot of his story as well. I'm talking about Mr. Elton Ray Smith, who went by the nickname of Toad. So all of us, his friends, and of course his family, knew him as Toad. How he got that nickname is also in the book, in the chapter entitled The Man Called Toad. And I may do a longer remembrance of him in a future episode, but for now, know that he passed away peacefully at the age of 91, less than 3 weeks shy of his 92nd birthday. Everyone who knew him, myself included, felt blessed to have him in their lives. May he rest in peace. This is a Positive Vibes interview episode. The Positive Vibes podcast strives to present a variety of viewpoints from all walks of life. The opinions of interviewees are their own, and you and I may not agree with everything that everybody says. In fact, I'd be worried about us if we did. But all of my guests share this in common. They are positive people who take action to improve themselves and the world around them. And I find that I learn something from every single one. I hope you will, too. Hello again, Dr. Yasmine S here, and today on the Positive Vibes podcast, I'm talking with Dylan Crowell. Now, I first heard from Dylan after he read my first book, Walk Through Fire, The Train Disaster That Changed America. And if you've listened to the first episode of this podcast or have been a subscriber to my newsletter, you know how the concept of positive vibes grew out of that book. After reading that book, Dylan sent me a very nice handwritten letter, and we'll get back to Dylan's letter writing project in a moment. But in it, he explained that Waverly, Tennessee, which is my hometown, is also his hometown, and he asked if we could be pen pals. So I think you'll find, as I have over the past couple of years, that Dylan is a very positive person with a positive attitude toward life and a desire to help others. So Dylan, welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here on my second ever podcast. I'm excited to talk with everyone.
Well, we're so excited to have you here. Dylan, let's start with your Pen Pals project, which I think is just extraordinary in this day and age. Just maybe start by telling people what it is.
So during the COVID-19 pandemic, I worked as a shift leader or manager at the CVS pharmacy in Waverly, Tennessee, where we grew up. And I was noticing a lot of people were just confused, didn't know what to do. People that usually went out to like basketball games, baseball games, um, or just went out and just did fun things in our small hometown. They weren't able to connect, especially our elder people that were immune compromised or our elderly citizens of our community. And so I was like, I wonder what I can do, and I just sat and pondered on it. And I've always written fan mail to celebrities or Broadway shows since I've been probably about 6 or 7 years old, and they would send me back autographs or playbills or so I've always had the joy of writing letters and going to the post office and mailing stuff and getting stamps. And so I was like, I'm going to pen pal with a couple of people because I'd been pen pals with a few celebrities. Pat Carroll, who was the voice of Ursula in Disney's The Little Mermaid, the animated film, and a few other just minor celebrities. And I was like, well, I'm going to do this. So I got on Facebook and I started, asking everyone for their mailing addresses and birthdays and anniversaries. And during COVID, it was just a major pen pal chain of where I went to all of the local county, for a couple counties over as well, to their nursing homes and hospitals to ask how many residents they had. And I would drop off letters there. And a lot of them just started connecting. And then I'm connected with people in, Thailand. I used to have a pen pal in Africa. Some of those fall off. That's something that I've learned with this, the pen paling is, you're not going to be a pen pal with somebody forever. Some people pass away. Some people just, don't have the money for stamps anymore because the stamp prices go up, 1 to 2 times every year. Um, and it's just, I keep up with birthdays, whether it's through Facebook and usually on the first. So, for example, my birthday's coming up. It's May 25th.
Well,
And
happy birthday in advance.
thank you. Um, but I keep up with everyone's birthdays, and on May the 1st, regardless if your birthday's at the beginning of the month or the end of the month, I just send a birthday card out then because also it's easier for me, and it's just something to pick, cheer people up, or if someone passes away, or sympathy cards and get well soon cards. Um, it's just something I've just tried to help people with, and it's actually you know done a lot for me in my life. I was able to be on TV for it with Lin-Manuel Miranda, the creator of Hamilton, and oh gosh, who else was there? It's a TV show on Apple TV called Dear, and it has
Is that DEAR or D?
yes, Dear,
Okay.
and I'm on season 1 with Lin-Manuel Miranda. But also on that series, you have Jane Fonda, Selena Gomez, Oprah Winfrey. I think Stevie Wonder's on there. There's a couple ballerinas. Mike Tyson, Gloria Steinem. There's just a variety of people. Jane Goodall's on there and it just talks about like letter writing and Beth Level right here. She's a famous Tony Award winning actress. I have her tattooed on my arm.
Okay.
Her and Lin-Manuel Miranda were the first two people that I ever came out to as gay when I was a kid, about around the age of 11 years old in a letter. And they both kept those letters, and I did my coming out story on TV about letter writing, and it's a very remarkable TV show. So you don't have to watch it for my episode, but for a lot of people, like especially with the ones with like Oprah Winfrey and Gloria Steinem, they're very very powerful episodes about, especially for feminists like myself. They're very powerful episodes on strength in different communities and a strength through letter writing.
Oh my goodness. So you have been doing this since you were 7 years old?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you were 7, what made you do that? Like, can you remember what made you think to
I
do it?
actually do. That was when YouTube was the prime. Everybody was on YouTube, and there's just distinct people I remember watching that did. They would send fan mail to Broadway shows. I remember going to my nana and saying I need to get envelopes and stamps, and I did. And I remember receiving my first autographed playbill from the cast of Mary Poppins on Broadway. And I was just like, oh, I love this. And then so I started collecting playbills. And then I just started writing like that. And then I would, sometimes I would write to elderly people from my childhood home or my childhood church. Um, and that kind of lasted a little bit. And then, like I said, during COVID is really when I picked up on the, pen paling to people that were non celebrities. But yeah, I think it was the YouTube videos of those people, collecting autographs like I did. So
Oh, okay. So that's so interesting. What sort of volume do you keep up, like in a typical week or month?
I would say upwards of like 150 probably.
Okay, 150 per month?
Yeah, per month.
And you write all of this by hand?
Some I do by hand, some I do by the computer. I'll type it out because after a while my hand will start to cramp, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna. And so I'm sure, especially with us pen paling, you've seen some of mine that have been printed. I always make sure to still, sign them at the bottom. But it's sometimes, especially like I have a huge stack actually right here of this is just from like 1 week that I need to get going on. And I'm a little running a little behind because I've had so much going on in my life. But a lot of this stack is just of people that are incarcerated and their loved ones on different pen pal websites have reached out to me and said, my son or my grandson or my daughter is incarcerated and they need someone to write. And we saw you on here. And that's, I've wrote to one person in here. His letter's over here somewhere on my big stack of stuff. Um, I've been writing him probably upwards of 3 or 4 years now and getting to know his story. And um, it's a very powerful story. It's he's made mistakes. He's realized he's made mistakes, and there's also some people in these letters of I'm writing some people that did horrendous crimes. I'm writing some people that have drug charges, and those people that have drug charges are in there longer than people that did attempted murder. So it's also a very interesting concept to talk to these people about their crimes and their lives and what led them to this. And that's with everyone, even people that are not incarcerated. Some people have such powerful stories that have made them the person that they are today and why they went into a certain job or different things like that. And that's also something that I've enjoyed is getting to read these people's letters about their lives. And some people just really, when you get to pen and paper, I've learned or I've noticed a lot of people just pour their heart out because they're not having to verbally say it. They're getting to put it to pen, and it's a form of therapy, um, which is just it's a really remarkable, like old school thing that I think more people should try to get into.
And I was just going to get to that because there is something very special about writing and sending a handwritten letter and being on the receiving end as the recipient of such a letter in your mailbox. When, nowadays so much is digital and electronic and you can send something by email or text or whatever. But our mailboxes, as a consequence, have become repositories for, junk mail or bills, and that's about all most people get in their mailbox. And so to get a handwritten letter or card these days is really something that has become extraordinary. And so I just wonder, why did you decide to do this by hand? Because I say that because, I have an electronic newsletter. I also do a lot of letter writing, and I started writing letters around the same age you did, as a matter of fact. And I know the difference between them. But so many people would say, well, if I want to reach this many people per month, why don't I just do a newsletter that goes electronically to everybody by email? So why didn't you do that? Why write by hand? Why take the time to do this?
I think there's a couple reasons. For me, it's something that you said is going to the mailbox and receiving something. Like I experienced that. When I was a kid, my favorite part of the day was going to check the mailbox to see who wrote me back, or if I had a letter in the mail, or if I had an autograph in the mail, or anything like that. And I just remembered that joy. And there was one story when the pen paling hadn't like really taken off, because during COVID, I mean, it was upwards of like 500 to 700 letters that were. I mean, like I had to have people help me address the cards and the envelopes and put the stamps on. It was during COVID. We didn't have anything else to do.
So
So,
it's five to
but
seven hundred per month. Per month?
around there. I remember when I first started, it would be 1 to 2 cards for every person in my address book. And my address book, I don't have it, but it's a 3 ring binder of people.
Wow.
Yeah. And it would be, whether it's just Happy Easter or just checking in, or that was kind of overwhelming at first. Luckily, I had my brother to help me with that because he works at Austin Peay State University, and he was at home because there wasn't really in person stuff going on at that time, and so he helped me, make an address book. And as I was writing the letters, he would put the stamp and return address label on there and write on the address. That way, we could just put it in an outgoing mail bin and just have it going. So that was one of the things. But also, when a local person in Waverly, she was diagnosed with cancer, and I'd make sure every week to send her a card, or at least once or twice a month, let's per se. And when she passed away, her family, in a shoebox in their hallway storage closet, found every card that I'd ever sent her, and she kept it. And it was just something that she looked forward to, walking to the mailbox, getting that little bit of energy and exercise to do that. And I never really heard back from her much because she was very weak, and she didn't have the energy to go drop something off at the post office. Um, but that was one thing that really, I don't know. They just kind of, it made me feel like I'm doing. And they told me this at this person's funeral, while we were at the graveside service, and it was just, I don't know. I was like, I need to, if I'm making this much of an impact on people, um, then it's worth the money that I spend on the stamps and cards. And every year for my birthday, um, I always post on social media, for anybody that wants to buy me a book of stamps, or for Christmas, if anybody, that's what I want for Christmas is stamps or greeting cards or stationery or envelopes. Because I go through so many stamps, and it kind of becomes very costly to do
And
all
at
of
the
this.
at the end of our interview, we are going to get your address so that if anyone listening wants to send you a book of stamps or wants to become a pen pal, we'll get that address. So
Oh, well,
listeners, just hang on till the end of the interview. We'll have that for you.
well, thank you. I love that. But that is just something that, I've, like, when I was still living in Waverly and working at CVS Pharmacy, multiple people. I still have the card. It was upwards of like 50 to 60 people got together and did like a little birthday parade for me when I turned 21. And people, I had probably 50 to 60 books of stamps. People were sending me Amazon gift cards. Um, and it made me feel like I was doing some good in my small community. And shout out to someone from Waverly, if you're listening to this, Chanda Elliott, her and her kids, and Cassie Cagle, and a bunch of other people in our small town got together and posted on social media platforms of like, hey, we're doing this for Dylan if you want to drop off $5 to $10. So it's just little things like that. I was happy that I could do that for people, and bring a little bit of joy in a very, very dark time.
Yeah, and I think that shows incredible understanding and empathy on your part, especially the story that you related about the woman with cancer and what a difference you had made in her life. And I think it's these quote unquote small things that really aren't that small, and
Hmm.
that are a lot bigger deal than we think, and sometimes we don't find out until later, as you did. But I'm really glad that you have continued to do this. I mean, do you see yourself continuing it?
Yes. At times I do, like, for money aspects, I do have to catch myself. I just had a pretty major surgery in January, and I had plenty of time to sit down and write. And I got on these pen pal websites, and that was a little overwhelming because some of these pen pal groups can have upwards of like 100,000 people in it, and it's just kind of, some people want to write you, some people don't, and then you write, and some of those people, let's say 25%, you send them a first letter and they never respond back. And so I do, I see myself doing this until I can't use my hands anymore.
Until you can't use your hands anymore. Boy, that's how I feel about writing too. That's wonderful. And you mentioned that you've had international pen pals as well.
Hmm.
So,
I'm in Germany. I only have like two or three because international stamps are very expensive. And so I have one in Sweden that I've had since I think like 2021 or 2022. And like I said, I used to have one in Thailand, but I haven't really heard from them much. But yeah, there's websites also where you can go on and send someone a customized postcard, and the company pays for the postage and stamps and all that jazz, and you don't even have to buy anything. You just go on, and I think it's like $1.27, and they'll send it out for you.
and so, a question about penmanship here. So, did you learn, because I learned handwriting in school, I learned cursive. Did you
Mhm.
learn that in school?
Yes and no. I used to have when I was a child. I used to have the sloppiest handwriting, and I just didn't really. I would write too big sometimes. I would write too small, and then just over time, I've just practiced. I've just like, and I just and I if people can see this, I write with a weird way. I don't do it typically like everybody else does. My hand grips it like this. And so like I kind of had to like teach myself a different way on how to write. And at times I do catch that it's like, okay, well this is only legible to me. So like kind of like doctor handwriting of where they're like, and you'll understand this of where they're just scribbling and they're like, oh, well, that says, do this, this, and this. And it's like, it does not. You may think that, and because you're in such a rush, but it does not say that. And so I have to like catch myself. But in school, I remember like learning how to write uppercase and lowercase letters in cursive. Um, and a lot of that was when we learned how to, and this kind of makes me sound old even though I'm not old, when we did checks. Like I remember my first grade teacher bought us like checks and like taught us how to write a check. And she was like, you need to write it in cursive on there and make it look nice. And we only did that, I would say, maybe 3 days out of our whole school year. So it was a very slow um, process with cursive and stuff like that. And I'm still not good with cursive. I just kind of created my own form of cursive.
So, this is amazing for me to hear because I think, as you know, I went to a Catholic grammar school, St. Patrick's School in McEwen, Tennessee, and we spent all of third grade learning to do cursive. We learned to print first and second grade, and then third grade, the big deal was cursive handwriting. And
Oh,
that was a whole period, and that was all year long. And you just got better and better at writing cursive. And I think a lot of people, over a certain age, was their experience. There was a big emphasis on cursive handwriting in school. And there is, we know now from science that it uses a different part of your brain to write by hand. And cursive handwriting came about, as you have discovered on your own, because it's a faster way to write than to print out every character. So
right.
yeah, so it's different than when you're typing on a computer. It's so different, and I'm just delighted that you're finding that. Now, I want to ask you, how many people write you back of the pen pals? Now, you mentioned the big website, maybe 25% of people don't. But other than the websites, people that you know personally, how many would you say write you back?
It depends on the time of year. At Christmas, everyone's in the mood to send Christmas cards. So I would say last year, in total of like pen pals and local people and friends and family, I think we counted it was like 527 we sent out
Mhm.
of Christmas cards. I just got tired of sending them. So I didn't get to everybody this past year because I was very busy. Um, but I mean, I remember the Christmas before we were upwards of almost 1,000 people that we sent to. And I would say out of those people, you like, oh, here's an example. I just graduated from college, so I sent out graduation invitations or announcements, I should say. And that's usually people either want to send you a gift or a card, or just pen pals will write you, send you back something. And I would say in that percentage, I'd say at least 65% of people wrote me back around that time. But on average, I'd say at least 50 to 55% write you back.
That's not bad.
Or they'll send you a message or a text or saying, "Hey, I received the card," or "Thank you," or something like that.
Yeah. Well, if they're listening to this episode and they owe you a letter, I bet you'll get one after this.
Probably so. Because I usually, when I see somebody in public and they haven't written me back, I'll hound them and be like, "Hey, why have I not gotten a letter from you?" And then usually a couple of days later, I have a letter in the mail.
Right. So now, where do you get your stationery and your cards?
You know, I have one of my actually my best friend. There's a huge. I have to tell this story real quick. There's a huge age gap in between us. She is turning 66 this year, and I'm turning 26 this year. And just from over time, she has written, like, or donated to places like St. Jude and all these places that give out free cards. So I'd say each month I probably get at least 33 free cards from her. But like for regular envelopes, I just buy them off Amazon. But I go to antique stores because a lot of like elderly ladies that own little antique booths will sell, 7 birthday cards for $2. Because they're old and vintage. And I'll just, every time I see stationery, I'll try to buy it and keep up with it. Or I'll go to like the Dollar Tree, um, and do different things like that. Like the Dollar Tree and Family Dollar in Waverly is um, shutting down or remodeling or something like that. And all of their Hallmark cards are now like anywhere from 25 to 75 cents each.
Oh,
And so I went in and spent like $70 last week to just kind of get a bunch of them and have a huge variety of cards.
yeah, yeah. No, those are all good ideas. 'Cause I'm always looking for stationery myself. And as you can imagine, when this used to be much more common, letter writing, you could find so many places selling stationery and so many different kinds of stationery. And now you really have to look for it.
You have to look hard. Let
Yeah.
me see. I think I don't know where it's at. If I can find it before we end the podcast, I will show it to you. But it
Okay.
is I found it at a antique shop and it was like newly sealed in a gorgeous box and it was like a handcrafted box and it had 2 little elephants on it and it was like $3.99 and I was like, oh, this is a steal. And everything was like custom made and it was made in some region in Africa, somewhere in Africa. And I have learned that it's made out of rice paper and elephant manure.
Whoa. Now, wait, how
Yes,
did you learn that?
it came with a little information card once I opened the package. And it's the guy that owns it. His last name is Pooh, like Winnie the Pooh, Pooh,
Oh my.
and he calls it Mister Pooh's paper. And I was like, I'm never gonna be able to use this. This is such a wonderful conversation piece.
That is very interesting to say the least.
And I was like, when I write to somebody, do I say this card or this letter or piece of paper was made out of elephant manure? Have a wonderful birthday.
Right. Yeah. That does present a dilemma, a letter writing dilemma. Love it. Well, let's switch gears for a moment because I know there's another passion of yours, and it has to do with the theater
Oh
and
yes.
musicals. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that. I know that you go to see a lot of plays and musicals in particular. So maybe just tell us about that too.
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I did not have the best or easiest childhood per se. It was a lot of obstacles, and still to this day causes me a lot of obstacles and stuff. And thanks the Lord for my nana. She has completely taught me and trained me into the person that I am. Just has really educated me on what it's like to treat other people, no matter what they look like or sound like, or who they vote for, whatever. You treat everybody the same across the board. It can be difficult at times. I've learned as I get older, but you have to learn to be. Everyone has a story and everyone has an experience, and I can say her taking me to theater change like helped me learn that lesson. You have to something I've realized, and a lot of people don't realize that don't go to theater is, for example, at TPAC, the Tennessee Performing Arts Center in Nashville, they have Broadway tours that come through, and the venue holds upwards of like 2,500 people, and 8 times a week, all these strangers in a sold out audience go and sit in the dark and get taken away, and they leave their problems at the door for 2 to 3 hours. And as a kid, that's something that I feel very fortunate to have been able to understand at like a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. Is I don't have to worry about anything in here. There's no trauma in here. I'm getting to watch someone else's experience, whether it's a fun show like Mamma Mia or Wicked, or if it's something like Les Mis or, Miss Saigon, where there's these gut wrenching stories of, you know, watching about people fighting for freedom. There's a show that's going on tour. It was just on Broadway and it won a couple of awards last year. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's the Suffs musical, and it's about the suffragettes. And I'm very, very, very interested in that history, and getting to see that story with music, and also just of the struggle that women had to go through in order just to get the simple right to vote, and to get their names on ballots and stuff like that. And the theater has taught me so much. It is my safe place, as sports could be for some people, or fishing or hunting or different things like that. But it's very nice to go to a show and to, like I said, to sit in the dark, and for everybody in that room, like, that's like 3,000 people, are different walks of life, and they can all sit in there and at the end of it relate to what we just saw on the stage, and that is so powerful and so remarkable. That's just what theater is, so powerful that a simple show like that can alter someone's mind, or just make them have more openness or more awareness to different things that we would never know about. And that's theater. It's just a wonderful escape. It's better than what other people do to escape, I guess you could say.
How do you think this is different from going to the movies, for instance? And let me just say, I love Broadway musicals myself. I love drama, plays, theater, live shows. So why don't you talk a moment about, how is that different for people than going to the movies?
And the theater is live, as everyone knows. It's live. It's in your face, and we're fortunate enough to have millions of talented people in the world, and these people. One of my favorites is Cats. And every time I've seen Cats live upwards of like 25 times now. And then I had the VHS. Um, and there's the song Memory in the show, and I'm sure most of the viewers have heard of this song. Um, and
Sung the song Memory live many times. It's one of
Oh,
my
it's
favorites.
beautiful.
Love
It's
it.
one of the best musical theater songs ever written. But there's shows like Cats and well, speaking, this is a perfect example. Movies, Sunset Boulevard. It's star Gloria Swanson back in the day, and Andrew Lloyd Webber made it into a musical that starred Glenn Close and Patti LuPone and Betty Buckley and a bunch of other huge Broadway names. And when you go to the movies, you don't get that. You get that experience of the gut wrenching. They're wonderful actors, but when they're live and in front of you, you're there. You're there. They take you into that world. When you're watching a movie, you most of the time you're going to know that you're in a movie theater. But most of the time, when you're seeing a musical or seeing a play or Shakespeare, whatever, you're getting taken into that world with them. You were taken on that ride. You watch them go from place to place. You watch the scenery change. And sometimes there's mess ups, so like you're on the journey with these actors.
Because it's
Um,
live.
because it's live, you experience everything with those performers. It's a one take, you say it, and then it's done. In that movie, for example, let's just use Sunset Boulevard for one of the most famous scenes in there. It could have taken her, the actress Gloria Swanson, it could have taken her 55 takes to do that. But when they made it into a musical, they told Patti LuPone and Glenn Close, "You have to get this done right every single night," and they did, and they were able to just completely it's just I just think I love movies too. I mean, because Wicked's another wonderful musical, but I will still to this day always think that the movie that just came out is better than the theater production. Um, we'll see how the second movie is, but I just think sometimes movies can give you more than the theater can with story wise, and then sometimes they can't. Sometimes it's the theater can just gut wrench you. And for years they wanted to make Miss Saigon into a movie, and I said you're never going to get the reaction that you get out of people when you see that in the theater. Because back in the early '90s, when the helicopter flew on stage and people were dying and stuff, it was just beautiful. I mean, it was just beautiful, and it's visual, and it's something I think the theater unfortunately has lost a little bit, a lot of the spectacle. Um,
Phantom of the Opera, when you say spectacle, that is what comes to mind. My goodness,
yes,
how can you reproduce that? And they've made films out of it, of course, but the live experience, there's just nothing like it.
especially, they call. I just finished reading a book, and it was about the British invasion of theater that came into the United States, and that's when Les Mis, Miss Saigon, Cats, Phantom, Sunset Boulevard, all of these musicals originated over in the UK, and they came over and they took the theater industry by storm, and it is still one of the golden ages of Broadway. There's never. I don't think in my lifetime we have wonderful performances and stuff like that now, but there's never going to be a time in my life I believe that wasn't in my life either, of where on Broadway you can go and see billion-dollar productions. I mean these are just it's never gonna happen again because now that we have the CGI and we have LED screens and all that stuff that a lot of theaters are starting to use. They're not using the actual like handcrafted sets. And I mean they've adapted them from where Phantom was on Broadway to where it went on tour, and then when it went to they did like a sit down residency in Las Vegas, Nevada, and when the chandelier drops in Phantom, they had it designed to where um, the charms and the fake glass, falls off and it would hit people in a certain area.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it's just remarkable, stuff that was done back in the day, and I wish I would have been around for
If
it.
you think of the name of that book, get it to me so I can share it in the show notes.
Yes, yes, I know one of them. It's like a two-parter. It's called Singular Sensation. And then I think other one's called Razzle Dazzle.
Okay.
And then also other books for people to read, to like read more about theater. I can't remember his last name. I'll try to email it to you. I know his first name's Eddie, and he has a book that just came out from Oxford. He works with Oxford, and it's called A Wonderful Guy. There's one called Nothing Like a Dame, and there's one that's called Be a Lady or something like that. And he has conversations with Broadway legends, and that is probably it's literally he typed out the conversations and just put them in there, and these are questions that nobody ever asked, and they're talking to these people that were in this theater time of where theater was golden, of where you could go see B. Arthur and Angela Lansbury in the same show. you know
Amazing. Now, do you have a favorite musical?
it changes. I used to be like right now. I love the musical Kimberly Akimbo that was just in TPAC, or just at TPAC. It's touring the United States right now. I loved The Prom. Yeah, it really changes. I have everything hits a certain part, so hits a certain point, and then there's some shows I just hate, and there's some shows where I'm like, oh, we're not going to see that again. But like,
What about live theater that is a drama, a straight drama, not a musical or even a straight comedy, but it's not a musical. It's just what we think of as a play. Do you see those? Do you?
oh yes, unfortunately, those do not tour as much.
Mhm.
Um, like when they're Broadway productions, they just don't sell as well. Still one of the most gut wrenching and beautiful pieces of theater I've ever seen. It'll be in my top three until something replaces it. Was the new production of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. It toured the United States. I used to work at TPAC, so I got to see, or I got to work every performance besides the one that I went to see, and I traveled to Huntsville to see it. John Boy from the Waltons, Richard Thomas, was in it. He played Atticus Finch, and it was so gut wrenching. There's a difference in the movie, the book, and the play.
Uh, I will say To Kill a Mockingbird, the book by Harper Lee, is my favorite book of all time. So, and the movie with Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch was excellent.
Yes.
But it's still not the book. And I have this bias, and I always will, because it's a book I reread every couple of years, is there will never be anything to touch that book. So you have had, that sounds like a really memorable theater experience. That was something I was going to ask you, is what has been your most memorable theater experience? And it sounds like that's up there.
That is up there. I, one that I remember just sticking with me from childhood is seeing the original touring cast of Hairspray and getting to see the musical Memphis. And they're both about segregation, and they're both about, I mean, they have a little bit of political in them, not much, but they have a little bit. And I just remember as a kid seeing those shows, especially from the small town I come from. A lot of people don't talk about race or don't talk about different things like that. Or the past, or they don't. A lot of people don't talk about that, and so it was very nice to see Hairspray and get to learn as a kid. Like because these are real stories. This is really what happened to people. And being, I was probably 4 or 5 when I first saw Hairspray. And so those are ones that I think about constantly. Of those that were, it was like a light bulb. And then still to this day would probably finally be seeing Cats live and seeing Kathy Rigby and Peter Pan live, because I watched those VHSs so many times.
So I
Um,
remember being a child and going to TPAC, the Tennessee Performing Arts Center, as you've said, and see and having Kathy Rigby, fly out over the audience as Peter Pan. That just, as a kid, that just blows your mind.
yeah. And it's just also, and now, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I saw Kathy Rigby. She is still,
Yeah.
this huge legend that is, like that's walking on the earth. And I just remember, I don't know, like there's a lot of people, like I said, I had a really difficult childhood, and there's a lot of, most of them were leading ladies that were on Broadway or on tour that I just fell in love with, and I would listen to their music to get me out of that negative headspace. And I've been able to meet a lot of them because of TPAC. Um, and like Betty Buckley, who was the original Grisabella in Cats, she toured with Hello Dolly. And I was like, ugh, I'm going to hate Hello Dolly, but I'm excited to see her. And then Hello Dolly has just been one of my new favorite musicals because it's so clean and so fun. And I'm all about like old timey leading Broadway ladies that can just come in and just steal the show, and you're just fully focused on them. And it's just that show, no matter who you put as Dolly, the show is going to be just remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. So you serve on the board of a theater, or you're involved like with go ahead.
Yes, I'm on the board of directors for Watershed Public Theater in Columbia, Tennessee. And we here soon should be announcing our new season, but I've only been on there probably a year now. And I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I just graduated from college with my master's degree, and I really want to put this to work and, donate my time back to the theater. And I had a couple different theaters that were interested, and this one just is the one that fit. It's very small town, very local, beautiful. It's just a beautiful show, or a beautiful theater to work with, and it's nice to be. One of my dreams has always been to work at a theater and be able to pick the shows that come, regardless if it's a regional theater, if it's a Broadway touring theater, if it's concerts or whatever. I want I want to be the one that has the diversity in the theater, and I've been able to be a part of that at this theater. I've been able to give my ideas on like, hey, during this time of the year, we should do this type of production, or this is a great title. We could do any type of the year. Well, let's do this play or this musical or this Shakespeare show, and it's been nice to feel appreciated and validated with my knowledge and experience of the theater, and also teach people about like, hey, we're going to do this and this. And it's been very nice, and nice to use it in a different capacity than I usually do, of just talking with other fans.
Now, have you ever acted in a play yourself?
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, I thought I was a Broadway star. I would do shows at Waverly Central High School, and I would think that I was Patty LuPone. Ethel Merman was me. Um, and I remember like everybody being like, everybody else in the plays are not good, and you're awesome. And I'm just thinking, thank you, give me my Tony now. And then when I got older, I was like, you know what? I'm talented, but I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to act. Um, I don't want to be backstage. I don't want to be on the stage singing, which is fun. I would love to go up and make people laugh or cry or whatever. I think the only time I would get back on stage is if I could be a comedian, because I would love to just go and make people laugh.
Wow, wow. So, you have a really full life, Dylan, and uh, I want to, we're going to get to the last question in a moment, but before we do that, I want to make sure I circle back to the Pen Pal project. And if you could
Yes.
just, yes, if you could just tell everyone, if someone would like to be your pen pal or would even like to support your project, maybe by sending you a sheet of stamps or some stationery, or what is that P.O. box address where they can reach you?
It is P.O. Box 517 in Burns, Tennessee, and the zip code is 37029.
Okay, I will put that in the show notes too. P.O. Box 517, Burns, Burns, Tennessee. And what's that zip code again?
37029.
37029. All right, and that's Dylan Crowell, Dylan, Crowell, Crowell, and we will have that in the show notes. Now, Dylan, our very last question, you know that the motto of positive vibes is keep on the sunny side. So
Yes.
how do you keep on the sunny side?
Oh, great question. Um, for me personally, I surround myself with the people that I know that care and love about me and that are going to pick me up when I'm down. And, that I'll, vice versa, that I'll do that for them. And, if you have your right people in your right circle, you can conquer anything is what I've learned, because I used to just surround myself with people that I was, um, my nana always told me friends are no, it was my nana, it was my best friend. She said friends are like a season sometimes. Sometimes they're in your life for a season, and then sometimes you find people that are, there forever. And that has been something that's been so difficult for me to learn and to understand growing up. But now I understand why, because people teach you a certain thing in your life. And then when you go on to that next relationship or that next friendship or next situation in your life, you know from the past of this person taught me this. Even though it was a negative experience, I can come into this one knowing how to move forward and be a positive person. Um, and then just making people smile. Like, watching someone else smile and knowing that you did that to them is something that no medicine is ever going to change. There's nothing that, like that is such a natural medicine for me. I shouldn't say for everybody, but for me, it just fuels my heart to know that you can make somebody smile. And regardless if it's sending a letter or, if you don't have the money to buy postage or cards or anything like that, message these people on social media and like if you're thinking about them, like you see on their Facebook that they're going through a hard time, reach out to them, whether it's a card, email, letter, mail, whatever, call, text message. Just let them know, hey, I'm here for you if you need anything. And you will be surprised, just you saying that can change their whole dynamic of how they're feeling.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dylan. It's been a real privilege to have you here on Positive Vibes, and I just really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad that we got to have this lovely conversation.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Positive Vibes on the Sunny Side. If you'd like to support Positive Vibes, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/on the sunny side. That's BUY me, ME, a coffee.com/on the sunny side. And the link will be in the show notes. Any amount you choose will help this podcast moving forward, and it's so appreciated. And also, please tell others, your friends and family, about the podcast and hit subscribe or follow for this podcast on whichever platform you like to listen to and use for your podcasts. Or if you're on the YouTube channel, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss an episode going forward. That will also help others discover this podcast because the more followers and subscribers a podcast has, the more the platform shows it to other people who might not have discovered it otherwise. So I really appreciate your help and your support. And this is Yasmine signing off until next time and reminding you to keep on the sunny side.